Yeah. Welcome.
Hello.
Very excited. Woo. Does anyone have furry friends? I completely forgot about that. Like any pets with them today?
Oh, not here, no.
I do, but mine are locked in the kitchen because my partner is sleeping.
Oh.
But I do. I have two lovely furry friends.
I've got a fake one. I've got my little squirrel.
Oh my god,
not live
adorable.
squirrel.
That is adorable.
Wow.
Oh,
but yeah. So welcome, obviously, to our very first live show for Paws and Pages. Our first read was Julia by Sandra Newman, which is I find it strange saying. Oh, I've got mine here as well. A retelling of 1984. It kind of is, but I would more specifically call it 1984 from Julia's perspective, because I feel like the author did something really clever from doing that. I'm very bad at giving synopses, so if there's anything else you would add, please add that now. Obviously, there's a lot of feminist themes and things throughout, but I feel like we're going to go through the plot and stuff later anyway. But other than that, have you guys read 1984 before? We all have.
Yeah.
We have.
Yes.
I have, but it was very long, so far long ago that I don't remember the details of it.
I think I worked out that I read it in 2013, so over 10 years ago. Yeah. So I was like, but I think it's one of those ones that stays with you, the characters and certain things, especially the world, stays with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel.
Yeah, I read it 2 years ago, and still, I forgot so much. But I also didn't enjoy 1984, so maybe that's why
interesting.
I kind of forgot parts of it. I did really enjoy this though, so.
Okay,
that's
interesting.
The one question I didn't think about asking is if you guys enjoyed 1984 to begin with. So, it's weirdly one of my favorite books, but I haven't reread it. I don't know why. But I would like to now, definitely. So.
Yeah, same. Because I read it. I don't know the year, but I know it was a long time ago. I read 1984 and Animal Farm around the same time. And I remember completely being mind blown by both of them. And now I kind of regret not having reread it, just to remember some details, because I think maybe it could have been a bit useful for this book. But I definitely read it and loved it, so that's good.
I similarly read it in high school, quite a long time ago, and it was a required reading in high school. So it was a little bit of it wasn't a book that I sought out to read on my own. And I remember enjoying it though. It was one of my favorite books that I had to read as an assigned reading. But it's been so long that the details have been a little bit lost for me. But I did enjoy it when I first read it.
No, I'm glad that the story kind of reminds you a little bit of what happens in 1984. So even though some of us haven't read it for a really long time, I kind of feel like you still kind of understand what's going on, because there's nothing worse than reading a retelling and being like, I didn't understand a single thing that's happened.
I feel like you don't even need to read 1984 to enjoy this. I mean, I think my issue was with not remembering 1984 is that I had a hard time distinguishing what was Orwell and what was Sandra Newman. So I feel like, okay, where did she just use something and it's an adaptation, and what is hers? Because I feel like a lot of details are not in 1984 and she made up. But I'm also not sure. So now it's hard for me, if I like something, to know who to give the credit to, because I'm like, whose idea was this? So that's my only thing. And I think if you don't even know 1984, then you're like, oh my gosh, this author, amazing. Why is not the whole world reading this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was gonna start off, because then I feel like a lot of what we have to say will come out in the main points anyway. The first one was Julia's character, because obviously the whole book is basically about her and her point of view. Because I personally found it kind of a bit complicated at times. Because obviously I feel like, is she an unreliable narrator? Are we meant to like her? Are we not meant to like her? Is it meant to change as you read it? Because that definitely is how I felt. Like at some points I was like, I don't like you. And then later on I felt sorry for her. And I'm very confused about whether I like her or not as a person. And I don't know if that's kind of like part of the point. I don't know.
Yeah. So are we going into spoilers now? I just want to make sure.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to say anything. Okay.
I feel like it's going to have to be spoilery if we want to go like in depth.
Yes. Okay. That's always the fun part, I think.
Spoilers from now, basically, for people who are watching.
Okay. Yeah. I felt similarly, I feel like Shannon. And going back to the point that Milena said, although I did read 1984, but I don't remember the details very clearly. But I couldn't help but compare this book also, especially due to the feminist themes, which we'll get there. I couldn't help but compare those to The Handmaid's Tale as well, which I feel like, especially when it comes to the characters as well and their narration, and here speaking of Julia specifically, just like you, I felt like, okay, are we supposed to connect with her? Are we supposed to like her? Maybe not so much, because I do think she is unreliable, and I think she's supposed to be, because she also lives in a very manipulated and unreliable world. So I guess that makes sense. But I kept comparing this book to The Handmaid's Tale, and whenever my brain did that, I ended up not enjoying her character so much, because I feel like we could have done a lot more with her. So I ended up not really enjoying being on her point of view all the time. I found it a bit tiring and frustrating, which maybe was the point. But I can't say it was necessarily a very enjoyable experience for me reading the book only from her perspective, I would say. I don't know what you guys thought.
Yeah, I kind of felt similarly. I feel like throughout it, like her relationship with the state, like the totalitarian state, was really interesting. Like I feel like following her perspective, you saw that evolution a little bit. Like at the beginning, she seems very much like this like ideal citizen for them. Like she goes along with what they want, and she just kind of like happily goes throughout her life. And then you kind of see that evolve throughout her story. But I kind of agree, like, because she was like so unreliable, and sometimes she'd do things that obviously like weren't likable at all. She was a tough character to like either fully get behind or not. And I think maybe that was part of the point a little bit. But I agree, like reading from her perspective was and just her perspective was kind of a tough one for me, because I never fully knew how I felt about her.
Oh, it's so funny. I feel like you all feel like this, but I didn't at all. I really enjoyed her. And especially, I feel like when she did things that are, like, for us unacceptable, I felt like it wasn't really her doing those things. I felt like it was the way that she was manipulated and raised. Her doing those things. Because, like, I think the first very disgusting instance, I don't think we'll discuss that, but I think we know what we're talking about, with Vicky, and then she gets angry at Vicky, but I don't think she felt comfortable with her own anger and with her own reaction. And I felt like that reaction was because of the way that she was taught how things should be. So I didn't have a problem with her doing those things. And I found it the way that she reacted to Winston, and that she made him out to be a bit of a doozy. I found that so funny. Oh, I enjoyed that so much, because when I read 1984, I was like eye rolling at that man. And Julia was like, yeah, you're just means to an end for me. And this is not this love affair that you think we're having. Which secretly I needed that. because I think that was my frustration with 1984, that Julia was so in service of him and of his character, and that annoyed me a lot. Even though I think 1984 is a brilliant novel, but yeah, I think I needed this book in my life, and I kind of like Julia because she was such a product of what they made her.
So, yeah, exactly. I agree.
There you go.
That's
perfect.
Yeah.
I feel like you've all just summed up exactly how I felt.
Yeah, it's challenging, so that's a good thing. I feel like I do love reading unreliable narrators, or just people that are already manipulated in some sort of way, and are part of the system they grow up in. That's very interesting. I do love that. It's just, I guess it's just the comparisons that I was making in my head that were not helping at all, like two other stories. I don't know, maybe that messed up my reading experience a little bit. But yeah,
I do remember that's just reminded me of one specific part where she was talking about, I think, her thoughts on the world as a child. And then she mentions about, like, obviously I don't think like that now. And it just made me think about, I guess, when you don't have the knowledge or understanding about how the world works, you can have one opinion on something, but later on in life that can change when you have that knowledge and understanding. And I feel like that does explain her character a little bit, and how that changes how she reacts to certain things throughout the book. I tabbed it a lot as well.
Oh, I love that. This book reminded me a lot of an interview I saw with Kazu Isuguru, and he talks about Never Let Me Go, which also has this regime that has a lot of, not a lot of freedom for their citizens. And he said that he didn't make his characters rebel because he wanted to write a story about characters who just accept their situation and don't necessarily rebel against it, and how that happens, and that is actually the majority of people who live in circumstances like that. And that kept on being in my head when I was reading this novel. Like, you expect her to get all angry and understand that this is all wrong, but there's so much nuance in that. And I felt like maybe that's why I enjoyed reading her as well, because I kept thinking of him saying that. And I like that Sandra Newman did that with this character, that it was such a tough journey for her to think differently.
I think too, like at the very end of the book, when they're asking, they're asking her all these questions of like things that would she do, or these like horrific things if like the state needed her to do those things. And you kind of get like the in her head, like what she wants to say and then what she does say, which is often like, I would go along and do whatever needed to be done for survival. And so I think that part really exemplified the like who she is versus who she has to be, kind of to survive in the state.
Yeah, I thought it was really strong, the ending, the way they did that a state that views itself as a liberator, maybe not as bad, but nothing is like pure good or pure evil, which I found was a bit of a comment on the democracy in the West, is how I read it. Especially because they were in France. They were English people in France who were those liberators. Yeah, I found it really well written.
Because we're on sort of like the plot and stuff. That's the one thing I was thinking as well when I read it, whether it was going to expand on the end of 1984, because I love the way 1984 ends with nobody knowing what happens. So I was a bit worried that the expansion of that would maybe ruin the original story. And I don't think it did at all. I think it added to it, because the ending was amazing. I was just sat in bed reading it and I was like, what? But I think I could see it coming the whole way through as well. I feel like I could see that it was maybe leading there. But I do think it was done really, really well.
Yeah, the ending was my favorite part for sure. I will say that. Yeah, definitely. It was hard to read. I was listening to the audiobook, by the way. I think some of you listened to it as well. And yeah, that whole part, the narrator also does an incredible job because you can kind of feel her conflicting thoughts and feelings as well while she's answering the questions. And I was there sitting like very stressed, like, are you actually going to say yes to all of these things? That's insane. And she did. And the way she said it was also very effective, I would say. So I do recommend the audiobook, just saying, to anyone. Yeah.
See, I didn't listen to the audiobook. But...
Oh, it's very good, Shannon. Mm-hmm. I don't know, I enjoyed it. Yeah, that scene specifically, I really liked.
I don't remember exactly like the last 50 pages of 1984. And I was like, oh, should I just pause this and read the last 50 pages? Because like the scene with the box, and that's all I'm going to say, I felt like, did that happen that way in 1984? Like when he screams, like, do it to Julia?
I don't remember.
You know, right?
I wish I remembered.
I think it ends with Winston's in the corridor. And he's been told, or he knows he's going to room 101, and it just ends like that. So the rest is, I think, left up to your imagination. I think. I might be wrong. It's been a long time, but...
Because I felt somehow like it was quite evil towards George Orwell's character, the way that played out. Because he was always a bit of a loser. Not that I like that word, but I don't know any better word right now. And then there's just the epiphany that he screamed, like, do it to Julia. And I was like, that is very mean towards Orwell's character. I don't know how I felt about that. What did you guys think?
I was quite shocked quite early on when I could tell the author was going to completely slate Winston. Because I was like, I really enjoyed 1984 and I enjoyed Winston's perspective. But then you kind of get on board with it because you can actually see where the author is coming from, and that maybe that's why I think there's a quote somewhere that it says that this book means that everyone should reread 1984 and view it from a different perspective, which is, again, in terms of the plot, the author has done something really clever with this book. But the ending, I feel like, obviously, because when she meets, is it Ample's fall? He did the same thing with his brother. So it's not just Winston. It's like anyone in that position maybe would have done the same thing apart from Julia, because she's just insane and chose a completely different option. So I don't know whether it's just Winston or it was the other people as well. Like, what would you do in that situation?
Well,
you'll never know, right?
Yeah.
No. I think there was this one guy, they said he never broke because he thought he could save his children.
Yeah.
So I felt like that was kind of a comment on how much he actually loved Julia, or how strong their relationship actually was. Yeah, I feel like, is it true? Again, I don't remember very well, but this book has so much more details on the world and on Big Brother. And I really, really enjoyed that. I thought it was gruesome as well. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine. No, because this is the bit that I really want to talk about, because I love the world. Yes. It reminded me of like how much I love what George Orwell did with the dystopian world building with 1984, and obviously the author really builds on that, and I think stays true to it, which is maybe a little bit difficult with where we've come in technology from when he wrote it, if that makes sense. But yeah, I was reading it and I was like, oh, I forgot how much I loved this world.
Yeah, I mean, this is the part where I'll say I don't really remember which details were added and which details are part of the original novel. I don't really remember. But I will say, usually I don't really like when they expand it too much, because I feel like the unknown is scarier in these worlds. So when you try to name everything and give like a job to everyone and everything that exists in this world, to me, it kind of lacks that scary factor. until you see it in action, obviously, like that scene with the rats and everything, which was awful. But other than that, I kind of like the idea of us not really knowing a lot, because it makes me feel more immersed in the world, not knowing so much, which might seem a bit weird. But in this case, it kind of works better for me, I would say.
I feel like something I always struggle with dystopians, like I'm the kind of reader where I like to know like how we got from point A to point B. And I don't, if I'm remembering, I don't think in 1984 goes into like too many of the details of like how they got from.
I don't think so, yeah.
Yeah. And so in this story, it doesn't really either. So I guess that's kind of faithful to the novel, but I just, for it to be believable, I like those like kind of interim details. But I do feel like while you're in the society, like it does feel very well built up. And it does feel like it's well fleshed out. I liked how a lot of the like different neighborhoods and different parts were described. I felt like that was pretty rich and you could see that. But I just wanted to like, I just want to know like how they got from where, you know, like England to this dystopian kind of society.
Yeah.
There was one small bit that did make me laugh. There was a comment about like blowing your nose after being in London and it coming like out black. I was like, that's not made up, because that actually happens.
Wow.
Yeah,
good to know.
Yeah, so I had a little giggle. I was like,
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, because I live in a town like just outside of London, and if we go to London for the day and you come back and you blow your nose, it's like black. So that's nice.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's no advertisement.
It's scary. Yeah.
I also felt like, but that is just my interpretation after also reading Animal Farm, that kind of 1984 is like communism in England, and then especially when you see in this book then the wealthier people, how they live, I feel like that's very reflected on how leaders in communist countries, like, not that I know that much about it, but like the difference between that. And I felt like kind of Orwell had a lot of issues with communism as well. So to me, it kind of felt like that. And I guess I could have peace with how everything was built like that. But yeah, it's so funny, Mary, you said, I don't like it when everyone has jobs. I love that so much, that she was just a mechanic and that we had the doctor. And I feel like seeing those people interact and knowing if they have places to go when there's something wrong with them, I feel like is so telling for the kind of society that you live in. So I personally really enjoyed that. Also how they slept and how like the television screens were screaming at them constantly. And that they all found like little corners where they could talk privately. Yeah, it felt so scary.
Oh, it did. I guess I just like more subtle details. Like, isn't the first sentence of 1994 like the clocks were striking 13 or something like that? And you're like, the clocks were striking what? 13? Yeah. And you're like, what? That doesn't make sense. And so those little details are usually what I prefer. Like, something here doesn't feel right. So I guess when it's just two on your face, it doesn't feel so scary to me. Although it is, obviously, because the world is, awful to live in, obviously. But I really like those little details where something doesn't feel right, and then you find out why eventually. But I get that for sure. Yeah.
I remember getting to the first time that she mentioned about like a clock turning like 13. I was like, yes,
yeah,
I was waiting for that.
The one reference I got. Yeah.
The other thing that with the whole Big Brother thing, I'm gonna just, because it's kind of involved in this. Obviously, the Big Future program with Big Brother basically and people coming and having all of his babies. When I first read about that bit, my brain, without me even thinking about it, just went Elon Musk. And I was like,
stop.
Yeah, no, because obviously here they're reporting that like one day in the paper he's had his 13th child, and then the next day in the paper he's had his 14th child by a different woman. And I'm like, it's Elon Musk. It's Elon Musk. And I was like,
no.
So these really scary like nods to things that are scarily happening in the world today. And I was like, I did not need that connection in my head. I was trying to avoid doing that.
Honestly, that's the scariest part of this novel, honestly, is how much you can compare it to reality. That's, oh my God, that's awful. No, I cannot think of anything else when I think of Big Brother. Wow. Okay. Yes. Makes sense though. Oh my God.
That was my Handmaid's Tale moment.
Yeah, that too.
But I found it so telling that she knew what she was doing, and still she got emotional, which I felt like there was such a struggle of her doing what she did for survival versus actually being so indoctrinated that she still believed in it and she still thought it would be this amazing thing to have his child. Which I found one of the most beautiful moments, I think, where you see the struggle with her character. And also so creepy. Oh, so creepy.
So creepy. I feel like the author did that really well, to the point where like you didn't really see these things coming, and then you're reading it and you're like, am I reading this correctly? And I feel like you're then put in the character's shoes, because she's just finding out about this as well. So she's just like, this can't possibly be what they're telling me. And you're sat there reading it thinking the same thing, being like, no, this can't be. No.
Yeah. Well,
I like, when it comes to feminist themes, I don't know if I found this necessarily a feminist novel. I just think it was the novel from the perspective of a woman, and I don't think the author meant to do anything else with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I think maybe that's actually the epiphany of a feminist novel, like, because she's just allowed to exist and have all the feelings that she has. Because I feel like a lot of experiences that she has, especially towards the ending when we see what it is that she wanted to hear from O'Brien, I felt like those are usually maybe characteristics that only men are allowed to have, but she is allowed to have that dream as well, and it doesn't have a lot to do with her gender.
I'm trying to think about what part do you mean at the very, very end?
No, that's like O'Brien gave her an assignment, and then she later discovered that he only gave her that assignment because he knew that is what her fantasy was, the same way that he gave Winston his fantasy. And I feel like how that was so explicitly described wouldn't necessarily be called, I guess, like feminist, but I feel like it was feminist because she was allowed to have those thoughts and experiences. So for me, it was just her allowing her existence.
Okay. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but I'm glad you said that, because I did have a problem. That's why at first, at the start of the live show, I was like feminist themes, because I didn't really see a lot of them throughout the novel. I kind of did have a problem at first with it being called a feminist retelling of 1984, because then reading the book, it was not really what I got from it. But now that you mention it, Milena, yes, maybe that was it. Maybe it was just the fact that we are reading from the perspective of a woman, and she's feeling all of those things that maybe would not be expected from such a character. And that's interesting. So I guess I can see that. I guess I was just hoping for more of those themes to really, be the focus, the center of the novel, I guess. But yes, I can see that, definitely. So thank you for pointing that out. For sure.
I wonder if it would have been a good book if she had just used all her feminist rage on 1984. I feel like maybe it would have become very predictable.
Yeah.
and annoying to read, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I definitely miss some strong female friendships and things like that. But then, was it possible in that world? I don't know.
Yeah.
I
don't think so, unfortunately.
No, because obviously there's her relationship with Vicky, because that obviously changes throughout. It's very confusing because right at the beginning, obviously there's the anger towards Vicky, and then you're not really you're confused as to why Julia is acting that way, and then you see another sort of side, and then it becomes more sort of like, I guess, a sexual relationship. I don't know if sexual is the right word, but like it changes. So at one point I was like, are they just friends? Are they not? See, that kind of, their relationship did confuse me, I guess, until the very end, where I think it becomes much clearer. But yeah, I do think a like feminist friendship would have been nice, but like you say, would that have been allowed in that world, or was it just that Julia didn't think that was possible in the world? I don't know.
I think it was discussed that it's actively discouraged for the people to have a close bond. So I feel like maybe with Vicky, she used the type of connections that she thought were possible and allowed, but that she just wanted a friendship with her. That is kind of how I read it. I felt so sorry for Vicky. My God.
Oh, same. Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh, and her mother. We need to talk about her mother, because that was interesting too.
Oh yeah, the whole bit of like her childhood and the farm. Was that the middle section? I had to like, that's when I messaged the group and I was like, I would check the content warnings, because
I will say I skipped a few pages. I have to say that, because when they started talking about animals and such, I was like, no, skip everything. So maybe I missed a few details. I'm sorry, but I can't deal with that. So
I completely understand.
Yeah, and I thought it was so beautiful when there's hinted towards that she betrayed her mother, but maybe she did, but her mother steered her towards that, which I found heartbreaking, that she had to do that for her survival.
Yeah.
But I thought it was beautiful. Her mother was, I think, feminist.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she seems so. Yeah, definitely.
I thought it was really clever as well, the way the author played that out, if that makes sense. Because I think initially we were actually told quite early on, I think, that she'd done that to her mother. But then I'd kind of forgotten. And then when it went back to her childhood and you find out how it happens, and then towards the end, you then find out what actually happened. Yeah, the way it was written and the way certain plot points played out, I thought was really, really clever.
One thing I was curious about is, I know 1984, like one of the big critiques of it is that like Orwell is seen, like the way he writes is kind of like seen in a misogynist way. And I haven't read it in so long, but I was wondering like what parts of, like, I don't know, like where that critique comes from, like what specific parts of 1984 are that way, because I was wondering how that kind of like played into this.
What I remember is just the way he writes Julia as this like pixie dream girl that Winston falls in love with, and there's a lot we don't know about her, but she is so like not important to Orwell. I want to say that we don't even need to know what's going on with her besides her relationship with Winston. So I think that is where the critique comes from, and also the whole dream pixie girl that he turns her in, or the way that she's written. So I feel like maybe Sandra Newman kind of got back at Orwell with writing Winston the way that he wrote Julia.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Which I wish I had just like listened to the audiobook of 1984 on 2x speed like before we started this, just to remember everything.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, I don't remember it very well, like the misogyny, only that I had thoughts like I roll when I was reading it. Yeah.
But I'm curious, what rating did you guys give the book? I don't know if you were gonna go get. Yeah,
I gave it a 4.
I think mine was like a 4.5. I don't know.
Oh, nice.
2.5 maybe.
What, a 2?
Yeah,
that's okay.
2.5. Yeah, it didn't really impact me in the way that I was hoping. No. Yeah.
I feel like I gave it like a 3. Like I thought that the writing was good. I don't know that. I wish I had read 1984 before. I think I would have got more out of it. And then, yeah, I think that was the biggest thing for me. But otherwise, I feel like the writing and the story was done well.
It's a little bit of everything. That's nice. I always like that in a book club. We go from a 2.5 to a 4.5.
That's nice, I guess. And one day, suddenly, we will all have a 5-star, and it will be glorious. So,
yes, it will happen.
That's like the goal. I love that.
Yeah, I'm sure it will happen eventually. It always does, once in a while.
Yes, it happened with our previous book club after 2 years. So
exactly. So there's hope, even if it takes 2 years. It's okay.
But then we do need to read Virginia Woolf, otherwise it's probably not possible. So
I love the honesty. Well, I give books 5 stars quite easily. I'm a high rater, so I'm not a problem.
I'm the problem.
I won't be the problem here.
I will the problem. Yeah. Definitely the problem. If you give me a book with good characters and cute pets, I'm yes, 5 stars. That's it.
I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Or Letters from Father Christmas.
Oh my god. Yes.
Was there anything else like that you guys, a standout moment in the book, or anything else that you guys really wanted to discuss about it? And would you read anything else by the author as well?
For me, definitely, because I started this way too late and I finished the day early. So I'm very excited to see what else Sandra Newman writes. And I'm sure I will find it very entertaining to read.
Yeah, I don't know. What has she written? Like, does she write historical fiction, or I'm not familiar with her
do
book.
not know. Oh, I'm sure it says like in the back of the book a little bit.
Oh, right. Yeah, probably.
Oh, she was longlisted for the Women's Prize for The Country of Ice Cream. The only good thing anyone has ever done. It's just random titles that don't really give an idea of a genre, to be honest.
Yeah, I would guess historical fiction, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, or dystopian, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I would read one of her other books if the premise really interests me. I don't think I would be very interested otherwise. So I don't know. Yeah.
How about you, Sofia? Would you read anything by her?
I don't know. I don't like dystopian, so I feel like I wouldn't read another dystopian. But I thought that her writing was like decent, so I feel like I would if it was like maybe historical fiction or something like that. I would.
Yeah. Maybe if it's not a retelling, so I don't have to clearly remember the details. the other novel.
I do have to say there are like scenes from this book that are like imprinted in my brain for how like horrifying they were. I think we probably all know what they were.
For sure.
I mean, I feel like it made sense like with this book that they would be in here, but that was tough to read. Yeah. Especially the Vicky scene at the beginning is just like I can't get it out of my head.
I know.
Yeah. That didn't need to have so much detail. Thank you very much.
No. Oh my god.
It felt like an actual jump scare. Like I don't even read horror or anything like that, but that was a jump scare for me. I was a bit like,
yeah,
that's where we're going with this. Okay.
Well, my thought, that's what Shannon mentioned. That was the first thing I thought.
Yeah.
I was I said, I was like halfway through it by that point, and I was like, content warnings, guys.
Yeah. Thank you for the warning, for sure. Yeah.
We'll remember that going forward, I guess.
I think so.
Do you guys want to talk about our next pick, like in this live show, or do you want to?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think so. Shall we?
I'm excited for that.
Right. I know nothing about it. Sorry. I'm excited. I don't know.
So my internet isn't great, but we were saying our next read, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Before I show it, and it's not what you were talking about at all. But yeah, I have it right here. This is like a new release. This is The Sirens by Amelia Hart, who wrote Wayward, which was a very big deal on BookTube a few years ago.
I think so.
So this is her novel. I think it's internationally published the 1st of April, I think. It's already out in the UK, but I think in the US it comes out in April. I think it's about mermaids. That's all.
It is.
I think so. You probably.
Maybe it isn't. I don't know. Maybe the title is deceiving you. We don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I think. Lucy is running from what she has done and what someone did to her. Oh, wow. So it's Wayward was, I think, about 3 characters, but I think I see a lot of the name Lucy. So I guess also like hello.
Look at that. Oh my god.
That's a nice edition.
That's really pretty. I love it.
I know, I clearly treated myself. But I think there are special editions as well that have the scales on here. Which is what I wanted. But I think that's the Waterstones edition, which I couldn't get. But would recommend. It's very pretty.
Yeah. Wow.
Have any of you guys read Wayward when it came out? Or
I haven't.
I did, yes.
Oh, what did you think about it?
Very readable, very entertaining. Not a 5-star. So okay. But I think it was her first book, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. So I felt like, okay, if we have like more books, I think they're gonna be better, because it just felt like maybe like the writing could have been a little bit more advanced, maybe. So I hope that's what this book will give. But like the characters are so engaging, the plot is very engaging from Wayward. So I think everyone can enjoy her writing, even if it's not a 5-star. So yeah, that's why I thought this would be a good book. Also because I saw a lot of hype for it, and I thought maybe people would like to read it with us. So
yay! All right,
I'm very excited for it.
Yes,
yeah, it looks really good. I don't think I've ever read a mermaid book, like ever.
I love mermaids.
I think I've read one. I've read one. That's it.
Yeah, you've read one?
It was a young adult one.
Which one?
The young. I forgot what it's called. The young adult one. That's like. Is she a mermaid? I don't know. It's like
with a light background and 2 women on the cover. I think it's something with deep.
No.
I think.
Maybe.
Ocean in the Deep. No, that's not the name. Deep. What? I don't know.
I did read a mermaid book by River Solomon, I think was their name. I think the title was literally Deep, which was a fantasy as well. which I quite
like. It was a long time ago again, but like I read that. Obviously, I can't even remember the title.
It would be really funny if it wasn't about mermaids. That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
But
I don't know how that's possible.
There was a boat and they were in the sea, so I'm assuming it was to do with mermaids.
I meant this book, The Sirens.
Oh.
The tagline says, like, on the little shell, it says, "Sisters separated by centuries, voices that won't be drowned out," which... That's scary. Like, really, we're gonna do that with language, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Well, sounds good. Sounds good.
That's even more of a hint that it's about mermaids.
Yeah.
It never says mermaid, so I'm getting nervous.
See? I don't know. I don't know.
This is her second book, by the way. I just saw it in the... just has Wayward right here.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
I hope we have fun. And
I think
that is
so.
For April
and
May.
April, May.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Right.
We'll be posting about it soon anyway.
Yes. For sure.
Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna say goodbye already. So I feel like it was a short one, but to be fair, it was a short book, and very like to the point in terms of like what it did, if that makes sense. So hopefully with the next one we might have a bit more like to discuss, possibly.
Yeah.
All right. And then maybe do some reading sprints if we can get like our schedule all aligned. That would be really fun.
I'd love that. Yeah,
for sure.
Well, thank you guys for joining me and reading. I really enjoyed it for our first live show.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
My button's not working. Every time. No.